Hello, everyone, and welcome to our little sound chat on the film One Night in Miami. My name is Andy Hay, the sound supervisor and re-recording mixer on the dialogue and music side of the film, and I'm joined today by Brian Parker, who is one of the sound designers on the show. We just wanted to run through two scenes in the film today and just give a little background on our process. So we're gonna show a couple of clips for you and talk through those two particular scenes. Just like to give a quick shout out to the rest of the team who's not joining us today. We're still obviously under COVID restrictions, and so it's just the two of us here. But Olivia Zhang is our other sound designer on the film, who was responsible for a large swath of the film. We had a dialogue department of Paul Carden and Michael Baird, who handled everything, basically dialogue, ADR, and group related, myself included in that department. Josh Adeniji was our Foley editor, Dan O'Connell, our Foley artist, and then mixing with me, Duncan McRae on the sound effects side. Just also like to give a quick shout out to our producers, Keith Calder and Jess Wu Calder, and Chris Harding over at Snoot, who I've known for quite a while. We've done quite a few films together. And a new friend, Jody Klein of Abco, also a producer on the film. So just like to thank all of them for having us along on this journey of One Night in Miami. And of course, a huge thank you to Regina King for entrusting us to do what we do to help support her vision on this film. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Brian to just introduce himself, say a couple of words, and then we'll get into it.
I'm Brian Parker, and I worked on sound design on the larger crowd scenes in the film. So the two boxing matches, and then the Boston concert scene. My work was focused really on getting those crowds to feel lively and large and realistic for the spaces. That had been part of our conversation. My conversation with Andy, from the outset, that was where my focus was always going to be. So that's what I did.
Yeah, great. So before we dig into some specifics, we're just going to lay up this first scene, which is actually the opening of the film. It's the Wembley fight. It's Wembley Stadium. And it's about 38,000 people all told, I think, if the history is correct, and if my memory serves me correctly. Something that was really important to Regina with respect to the film as a whole was for us to maintain a sense of intimacy with our four lead characters. So how that relates to this Wembley Park scene is that obviously, we're showing this boxing fight. We cut away to a couple of wides of the stadium, and we always want to get a sense of the size and the scale of that place and those 38,000 participants. But at the same time, we always want to be sensitive to remaining in Cassius's POV, Cassius Clay, played by Eli Gorey. And so that was the dance throughout the film, was maintaining a connection for the audience with the characters in an intimate way, but also presenting the sense of the space and the scale for each of the locations. So with respect to the Wembley fight, I think maybe what we should do, Brian, should we just play the clip just to remind ourselves
It's been
what we did.
It's been some months.
And show everybody the clip, and then we can talk some specifics about it. So I'm going to roll that now for you.
The rain has stopped. The excitement has really grown among this 40,000 strong Wembley crowd. It's safe to say that every single one of them is on Henry Cooper's side.
And Cooper's eye is opening wider. It's a shocking cut above his left eye. He knows he's got to get this fight over with fairly quickly. Clay doesn't like it. He questions the referee, but the referee's having none of it. Clay is mocking Cooper. I'm over here. Come on. Cooper knows he's trying to get that left hook. The left hook. Oh, there he goes. He just misses Clay. He raises his hands as he goes back to his corner. The crowd jeering him all the way. My goodness, Cooper.
Is this a joke to you, kid?
What'd I do?
Nothing. That's the problem. We had a fight plan.
Plan? Angie, look at him. I'm beating the shit out of that tomato can.
Damn right he is. Rumble, young man, rumble.
Oh!
Listen, if you're not going to keep your hands up, can you at least finish him off?
I don't want to get too close to him. I get any more of his blood on my trunks, my mama ain't never going to be able to get it out.
Nobody gives a damn about blood on some boxing
These
trunks.
is my lucky trunks.
Your mama's still doing your laundry.
Shut up.
Would you both shut the fuck up? Here.
3 rounds in, and it's not looking good for Henry the Hammer.
No, it is not.
This Wembley Park crowd was expecting a better showing from local lad Cooper against American upstart Cassius Clay. They've been saying the Louisville Knicks theatrics overshadow his actual skills in the ring.
I doubt Cooper agrees with that assessment tonight.
Let's just hope Clay can put this bloke out of his misery soon.
I think we may have all underestimated Cassius Clay, Ronnie. Perhaps he is as good as he says he is.
Finish him off!
I'll finish him when I'm good and ready to.
Let's go, Cooper.
You ain't got nowhere to be, do you, Henry?
Let's go. Let's go now, Cassius. Let's go. There you are. There you are. That's right.
Cooper, hang on!
Don't stay in too long. Move. Dance, Cassius. Keep moving.
Come on, he's wanting Cooper.
There it is. There you are. Gotta dance.
The crowd doesn't like it.
None of that. Hands up. What is he doing?
I don't know. Playing around.
Don't walk this guy down. Keep your eyes in the ring.
Elizabeth Taylor?
Anything might happen.
Keep those hands up.
That was the end of the 4th round, and he hit him seconds before the end of the
That was
round.
lucky. Get up there, Cassius. Come on. Get up. You're okay. You're okay. Come on.
Clay took one chance too many, and he still doesn't know where he is. He's still half out, Clay.
I want you to imagine a man who for 25 years of his life arrived to work every morning at 9 o'clock.
Yes, there's quite a lot of stuff in there. A lot of different voices. The radio announcer who opens the film. Obviously the ringside announcers. Cassius's corner. Cooper's corner. We got a ton of group for the ringside crowd, which is, what we're hearing a lot of. Their reactions to the fight, their reactions to Cassius's sort of theatrics, if you will, disapproval of his method of boxing, and then we've got the crowds at large, the sort of the near, the medium, and the distant crowds, and the interplay of all of those elements, and again trying to maintain that sense of being, for the most part, in Cassius's POV, where all this stuff is coming at him while he's solely focused on taking down his opponent. Obviously fairly typical with things like ADR, where we had Eli come in after the fact, and he basically did 2 takes of running around the ADR stage and watching his fight and reenacting his fight. And I just took those 2 takes and pulled them back 6 frames and had everything I needed for that stuff, which was great. All of his dialogue in the ring is for the most part ADR while he's boxing. The corner stuff in the corner is production dialogue, captured beautifully by our production sound mixer, Paul Ledford, and then really the bulk of the work in terms of the environment here is created from the group, which I think we dragged. Let's have a look. I think it's like 96 tracks of group. A, C, D, E, F, 6, 7. 7 times 16 is a lot. Some 90 odd tracks of group that comprise that whole environment, and then obviously some bigger crowd sound sourced from library. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Brian now, who can talk specifics about how he went about cueing the group, the things that we were thinking about in getting set up for doing the recording session, because we did this in the early stages of lockdown, when we didn't have Evercast and Zoom fully sort of fleshed out. This was a very, very lo-fi sort of Zoom type recording session where all of the group participants, I think there was 12 of them, were all in their respective home studios, and we were using Zoom as a means of communication. There was no real synchronization of picture from our end to them, and no way to mix all of those 12 returns back to us so that we could monitor what was actually happening in the moment. So we were largely dependent upon Zoom's sort of priority algorithm to determine what was coming out of the speakers on our end. So it was just a big jumble. Like we weren't really.
And although there were big downsides there,
Yeah.
for reasons we'll talk about in a little bit, it ended up working out well. There ended up being a large upside to recording everyone separately in their houses, even though it made for significantly more work for me to get it all synced up later.
Yeah, huge, and exactly, and that's one of the silver linings of this whole sort of COVID group way of working, is that, you know, yes, I'm dragging 96 tracks to the stage instead of, you know, maybe 32 or something, but I do have control over every individual voice. So that is the silver lining in this. But let's kick it over to Brian. And Brian, get into the nitty gritty about you know, prepping for group the day of, and then some of the things that you were using from those group recordings and the various software and things that you were using then in the post process. Sure. to create larger crowds from those recordings.
Yeah, this was an interesting project for me because it wasn't as if I was handling just the sound effects side of the crowd work, or doing all the ADR and group and having that be my domain separately. Since I was coming to this from a whole scene perspective, working on with both sound effects crowds and prepping for group all the while, I was able to really build everything I could with library sounds or my own personal recordings, and see what we needed from group to put on top of it to help sell it, to augment it effectively. So that was that you know, that informs my approach quite a bit. So I you know, basically built from the largest crowd into the more moving into the more intimate sort of distances of crowd, and we talked a lot about the mood. We talked a lot about the shape. We talked a lot about the shape that the scene should have ahead of time from a sound perspective. You know, it's not hard to see here in Wembley. Basically, everybody in the crowd is against Cassius Clay, and they want their local boy Cooper to win. That's easy to see, but also the specific shape of when they're reacting to Cassius's sort of jeering and his antics and getting that overall envelope was something I did working with, you know, boutique sound libraries and, you know, whatever recordings I've made surreptitiously at the Hollywood Bowl all over the years and whatever. And then I was able to use the insight from building those further away layers to inform how to approach our specific needs in the group session. As we track through the crowd, you know, you pick off certain specifics and try and hang this line on this person's movement in the frame, and covered enough of those specifics to feel like we were there with them, or at least set up Andy to be able to mix it in such a way. And that's one of the realms where having 12 tracks of individual people recorded at home ended up being a big asset, instead of having just a mono feed or you know, stereo group recording like you might do in most typical sessions.
And that, sorry to jump in, that certainly makes the mix more interesting and more immersive, to use that phrase that everybody's using these days. In that, I mean, we mixed this film in 5.1, and that was a conscious choice. You know, even within that context, the ability to dig into these several different groups of 12 or 16 group recordings and say, oh, you know what, yeah, that guy yelling at that moment right there would be excellent if it was just placed right here, and then she can respond over here and that guy back there.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of play that occurred in the mix with respect to very specific panning and use of these different voices, and especially with the stuff in this scene, because you've got all this great sort of London Cockney and British accents that are used to punctuate and give a sense of the space and the location and of that sort of antagonism, the back and forth between, you know, Cassius and the crowd. And so we were able to do that on stage. It was great. Like you know, like you said, not having a mono or stereo feed of group, but having very specific individual clips that I could say, oh, you know what, it'd be great actually if this guy, if I pull him back 12 frames, then he can inspire this person to jump in, and then that one's got some great sort of amplitude to it. So that's the woman that really gets, you know, Cassius to poke his tongue out, and then this guy can be the response. So we're able to find that in you know, in the mix as well, which was fantastic. Again, obviously to have that level of granularity and choice that was dictated by this method of doing the you know, everybody at home recording on their own systems.
Which took a fair amount of coaching. You know, the prep work there was key to connect with each of the actors and work with our group leader Tina Hart to talk about to talk with each actor about their recording setup, whether that be, you know, a booth or you know, a spare room or whatever. So it took a lot of doing prep work to listen to recordings and give some feedback and get all those recordings to the point where we could use them in the mix. The other large asset that we got out of that, after having taken the time to hand sync everything over the course of the day and a half after our session, which was very fun, which was a good time for everyone involved, namely me.
I'm smiling behind this mask.
Once we got all that done, I knew that I wanted to get get a big part of the volume of some of the specific mood moments from group. So you know, after getting, for example, everyone giving us several iterations of, oh, like a big crowd, big surprise reaction, big disappointed reaction, big individual cheers. Then I fed those into sound particles, and, you know, if I get 4 takes of each of those kinds of sounds, kinds of reactions from our group members, then okay, great. Now I've got 40 kernels, 40 source sounds, and the ability inside sound particles to make a crowd of 1,000, 2,000, or 38,000 in this case, from a sample set of you know, 20 or more, 50 or more. It's pretty remarkable. So even, you know, obviously you wouldn't do enough passes of recording 12 people at a time to give yourself 38,000 tracks of individuals. That wouldn't be a good use of your time. But using sound particles, I was able to generate enough audio, enough kernels, enough grains to build that larger soundscape in the fart, you know, in the very distant perspective, built some in the medium perspective, and some a bit closer to give more of that volume with the mood or the, you know, the specific emotional reaction tailored to what we were going for in each instance. And that ended up being invaluable. That ended up being
it's pretty incredible.
Big part of what plays.
Yeah, sound particles. I mean, the work that you did with that. I'm a very you know, I'm a noob with sound particles, and Brian's obviously much more experienced with it. But, you know, in our initial discussions of how we're going to attack the scene, he's like, oh, don't worry about it. We're just going to shoot some group, and then I'm going to throw it in this thing, and I'm going to mix it up, and it's going to come out of the washing machine. It's going to be great. You know, I just sort of said, okay, great. I'm just going to trust you to do that because you sound like you know what you're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I'm truly just blown away. The level of fidelity that you can get out of this thing, and the sense of scale, and how natural it feels. You know, and obviously just, you know, within the context of the mix, being able to layer the authentic, the real group on top and in front, you know, it achieves a very realistic and natural sounding result. I think it just turned out really great. Yeah, is there anything else specific to this theme that we should chat about? Well, we did a little bit of fun. The opening announcer is a redo of a piece of radio announcement that was of the day. We finished this film relatively quickly. We sort of backed ourselves into the fall film festival deadlines of last fall. So I think we finished end of August. So we had a bit of a compressed time schedule, and part of that, chasing down things like clearances for that particular radio voice was something that was just untenable. So we said, well, let's just re-record it. So we got who was it? One of Tina's guys did the
yes.
Matt.
I want to say that his name is Matt Fox, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so Matt
Fox.
Wolf.
It's Matt Wolf.
Matt Wolf. Yeah, if it's not Matt Wolf, then we're just going to leave the credit with Matt Wolf. So enjoy that. So we captured that. We did a few takes of that with Regina, who was present for all the group recordings as well, and very instrumental in directing us through those group recordings. And then we ended up shoving that out through the Nagra and getting a bit of dirt and tape saturation and bite on it, and take us back into that 60s kind of feeling.
Yeah, we experimented a little bit. We piped it out to a Nagra like at its my Nagra 4.2 at its like fastest, highest fidelity speed, and that was like okay. And then we slowed it down a little bit and hit it a little harder and got a little grittier and referenced the original audio a couple times and kind of get it as gritty as we wanted it.
Yeah. So that worked out well for us. It's always fun to do that stuff. I mean, we have Fuzzbox and we have all the various, tape saturation and plugins and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's fun to actually pull out the old boxes and plug stuff in and, go that route. So, I just want to give a quick shout out to Dan O'Connell as well for this scene with respect to the Foley. Did beautiful work. He built a boxing ring or some facsimile of a boxing ring in his Foley stage over there at Fox, specific for this, and got all of that great footwork for Cassius and for Cooper. It just, I had this, I think we all kind of know what that sound is, and I certainly knew that sound in my head, and we talked it through over the phone quite a bit, and he tried a few different things, and then I think he just spent a weekend constructing this boxing ring, got it just right in terms of the spring and the bounce, the density of it, and the resonance and all that stuff. So huge kudos to Dan for putting in the time and the effort there. The other thing Dan did, which was great for this, is he gave us a really great library of punch glove whoosh buys, wherein I don't know what he was using, but he crafted the majority of those whooshes that you're hearing from scratch, in the analog realm, which is super cool. So thank you, Dan. I think we should move on to Boston, because that's also a pretty dense scene and a lot of cool stuff to talk about in there. So bear with us one second. I'm going to take the Pro Tools session down. So the Boston Ballroom is, it's a memory that Malcolm is recounting of his experience watching Sam at this show in Boston, where the PA system gets sabotaged and Sam is left on stage as the crowd turns pretty ugly, and then Sam basically has the power to turn the room around and get them all engaged in clomping and stamping, stomping and clapping and chanting along to the Chain Gang song, and then he's vocalizing a cappella on top of it. Malcolm at the back of the room, he can't hear Sam because of the distance, but what Malcolm takes from this is the power of this man and his presence on stage and his ability to turn this room around. And he uses in the film, that show as sort of like, Malcolm uses that show as his sort of exhibit A for his rant and his rail against Sam, which is, the larger message of, we all have to think long and hard about our individual power and responsibility to the civil rights movement. And so that was it was an incredibly important scene for the storytelling, for the narrative. So Regina and I, we met early on and we talked through the scene, and it was scripted differently than it ended up in the cut. There wasn't intercutting as scripted, so that was a bit of a surprise when I finally saw the cut, which presented its own set of challenges because Malcolm is back in the motel room and he's speaking in a fairly hushed tone to the three other fellows who are, sitting pretty close to him, and then you've got this sort of wall of sound of the Jackie Wilson concert, and the sort of like devolving of the crowd, and then Sam's ability to turn it all around and engage the crowd and turn things for the better. So that was a challenge mix-wise, just because of the density of all of the elements. And in terms of the narrative, it was important for us to be able to convey the sequence of events in that the crowd at large is, in full, in full boo mode, and then Sam engages that small group of people up front in the crowd, and then he gets them involved, and then that spills out to the next 10 or 20 folks, and then out to 50, and then out to 100, and then a couple hundred, then ultimately out to what is, I think, 800 people in the room. So it was important for us to be able to make sure that we could convey that sort of ripple effects through the crowd. And so that was part of our conversations up front in terms of how are we going to achieve that? How are we going to, again, capture a group that's going to help us do this? Because this scene is an example of fully crafting everything from scratch in post. The only thing in the back half of this scene that is from the day is Leslie Odom Jr.'s vocals. Leslie plays Sam. In fact, throughout the film, Leslie is, I think 99% of the time we're using Leslie's vocals from the day versus the pre or post-record vocals, which is a testament to Leslie's abilities. So yeah, just a quick setup. We pre-recorded all the Jackie Wilson stuff. Nick Baxter of Igloo Music was involved in the production of the music, so he was there on the day. We had hoped, and we talked about getting the crowd to do the chants, such that we would have something to begin with on the post side. We've got 800 extras in this room, so why not get them to all chant and stomp and clap in synchronization? But the day went long. Once they got the last shot, they called the day and they let everybody run out of the building. And so we got nothing in terms of audio for the larger crowd in terms of the Chain Gang song. So we had to craft it all from scratch in post. So let me just play the clip, and then we'll get back into the details of it. Here we go.
I was there to see Sam, of course, but Jackie was the opener. Doing his usual routine, shucking and jiving like those types do. Not really my cup of tea, But thankfully it came to an end, and Sam was getting ready to come on stage. Yeah, I knew he was about to class this joint up.
I warmed them up for you, brother. Don't fuck up now.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Sam Cooke.
Sam comes strolling out onto the stage, catch the crowd. Boom. Wow. Sam steps up to the microphone, wraps his hand around it. You know how Sam does, he caresses it, one might caress a delicate piece of crystal.
Oh, pretty little fox. An NFL championship trophy.
You want to let me finish this story, Jimmy?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, like I was saying, He caresses the mic, pulls it close to his lips, opens his mouth.
Darling, you.
Sound went out.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't the sound system, was it? Microphone is off.
I know. How's that for some bad luck?
Bad luck, my ass. Jackie was always a king of sabotage.
Regardless, Sam was now stuck on stage with no sound and a worked-up Boston crowd. Well, things escalated quickly.
My band was out there like some runaway slaves.
Fuck y'all going?
Musicians and not bodyguards, baby. Good luck.
But Sam, he just stood there on that stage. I remember thinking to myself, this young brother was fitting to get himself killed.
Well, then what happened?
Something amazing happened.
You have no chain gang?
All right, let's go. All right, let's go.
All together, yeah. Everybody. Let me hear you. You got it, you got it. Sounds so good, yeah. Ah, yeah. That's the sound of the man working on the chain. The gang. That's the sound of the man working on the chain. Gang. All day long they're singing.
And I saw him up there covered in sweat and singing to him, but in the background was you couldn't hear anything except that chant. You know what? That was good enough. Yes, that was one hell of a show, Sam.
It sounds like something.
It really was, Cash. It really was. Brother, you could move mountains without lifting a finger.
So yeah, there's obviously a ton of stuff in here. Just going to do a quick walk through the session. Multiple groups of 16 of the recorded group. Typically, like specifics up top. Group A is basically all specifics. Group B, a variety of different things. Specifics, front of the room, larger, ensemble group, front of the room, middle of the room, back of the room, deeper back of the room, and then it's the same back of the room. So just multiple perspectives split out to different food groups. And then on the effects side, you can kind of see here on the second part of the sequence all of the individual stomps and claps that make up the whole thing, which was pretty deep. Both Foley crafting and recording a variety of different shoes and on the wood surface, and then also building out with sound effects to augment those and to play those different perspectives within the room. So Brian, want to talk a little bit about the group process for this?
Yeah, this was another one where because it was in early stages of the Safer at Home order, we didn't know what was going to open up, and we didn't know how we were going to pull off group until a little bit before we did it. So this is another one where I built as much as I could from my personal sound library and recordings I had already had access to, and boutique libraries off of soundeffect.com or whatever. I think that my first pass at this, I wanted to hear I just wanted a mock-up at least. I wanted to hear a version of the whoo ha. I wanted something before we shot the group, and so I think that I took like concert crowd reactions of much longer ooh ah, like
just cut out the middle, right?
And and chopped the middle out and time compressed it down with pitch and time. Yeah. Added a little bit of volume envelope just so the first part of it had a little bit more chesty.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. And just like squish it way down just to hear something because I want to hear the volume of it. I want to hear what we were going to lay the group on top of. So that took some doing. But this is another realm where Sound Particles just did a lot of the work. And it's not an automatic thing. It's not a one button and forget it. Like it'll configure all those different grains in different ways that sometimes you're listening to and you're like, nah, that's not what I want. So it's a little bit like it's trial and error. You kind of have to throw the spaghetti at the wall and determine whether you like the way this noodle looks or not. So, but yeah, after many, I jumped ahead. I used Sound Particles on the group specifically, again, because we had access to all the individual performers recording separately because they recorded at home. I had individual elements to feed into Sound Particles to create those bigger crowd moments. But yeah, so base layers of like 1,000-person crowd. They start out stoked on the show. They start out cheering for Jackie Wilson, and they give a huge cheer to Sam when he comes out, and then getting that mood to shift underneath their sound troubles and getting it that mood to slowly, not all at once, not like on a dime, but getting that mood to shift. I found it important to build it in layers to be able to weave those different elements together, where some people are still stoked and he starts to lose some people at the back of the room first. The people at the back of the room are also the last to join us again,
And it works really well in a theater where you've got surround sound. A little harder to tell in the stereo environment.
Yeah, the same goes for the stomping and clapping. Got a lot of detail and
tons of detail. The thing that interesting little side note with the stomping and clapping, we were doing the pre-record, or we were in pre-production for the pre-records over at Igloo, myself and Nick and Regina and Leslie, and it was clear that because the chant is on upbeats, that we would need a downbeat. So I suggested we stomp on the one so that we had an anchor. In fact, I don't think I think I just intuitively, I'm a drummer, so I just intuitively started stomping my foot on the downbeats as we were all sort of sussing out how the chant would go. And so it just sort of became clear in that moment, oh, Sam should probably stomp the downbeat, should stomp the one in order to kick this whole thing off. And so then that began a whole new discussion of like, oh, well then that's going to be part of the suit too, is okay, multiple people engaging, different shoes, different, are they on the beat before the beat, after the beat? So we kind of, it's, all of this is very sort of swimmy in terms of like the groove of it. We tried the groove tighter, which you might typically do in post. It's like, get things just right, but it actually made more sense to have it all sort of more spread out as you would experience like the concert where the back of the room is suffering a time delay from the front of the room, right? So like the crowd is not so much in sync with it. And so that spawned a whole other job for us, which was to figure out how to craft the growth of the stomp from one individual all the way up to 800 or so. And I think that kicked off in a similar manner to the group work in terms of like approach.
Yeah.
Sound Particles used in that as well? Or
for sure, yeah. There's
this is a giant Sound Particles advertisement.
Yeah, individual foot stomps in there. I also pulled like some sound of soldiers marching actually that ended up being useful for the rears. Useful for volume to put in the rears. The texture of it wasn't quite right for the wood floor. I mean, obviously, but yeah, there's a lot of individual recordings chopped up, aligned, thrown in sound particles, and yeah, I like it messy. I like it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you said, when the version of this that was very musical and really tight and together, I felt less fun in it. I felt less human.
Yeah, it just didn't feel as authentic to the time and to the moment. Yeah, and then in the mix side of it, just again juggling just a ton of different tracks, different perspectives. In the crowd, back of the crowd, front of the crowd, above the crowd, on the stage. So we cut different perspectives into the tracks as best we could, but then we're mixing the box, so obviously automation. You can edit and finesse on a dime. And then one fun thing we stumbled across was trying to achieve the sense of the room resonating with the crowd stomps, and ended up doing a technique that I use for club mixes and things, where we ended up taking the bulk of the stomps, running them through low ender, squashing the hell out of it, throwing it through a mono reverb, and then feeding that into the LFE, just to get that tail extension of those sub frequencies resonating through the LFE channel, so that when you're in a theater, big space, lots of air moving around, you do get that sort of visceral sense of the stomps kind of like hitting you in the chest, which is really satisfying in a theatrical setting. Maybe less so at home. Yeah, so that's that scene, and then and then the defined dance of the mix was, as I said previously, Malcolm's voiceover, if you will, is in pretty hushed tones, so a lot of delicate balancing of making sure that he's remaining on top and fully clear and audible against this backdrop of not only Jackie Wilson but then the crowd and then Sam's performance as well. I think we're pretty close to having to wrap it up here. So, Brian, any closing thoughts or comments you want to?
Not too much we haven't covered. I mean, certainly a very rewarding one. Definitely creating something from near scratch. The recordings that we had, the room recordings that we got from Paul Litchford of the crowd cheering were great.
Yeah.
But because we didn't get them actually doing the stomping and clapping, starting from scratch and kind of making a scene, having a vision for it. I mean, this is our first conversation about this, and I think one of your first conversations with Regina was about the nature of this and getting this to sound really alive. Yeah. And I think that a lot of us really miss live events, and a lot of us really miss live music and experiencing music and that with other people. So it was also rewarding to work on for that reason. Hopefully rewarding to watch too.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better. So thank you everybody for tuning into this. And we could talk all day about this film and all the things that we did with it and all the fun we had. We really truly had an amazing experience with it. I speak for the entire crew when I say that. So I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the movie. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.